Being here again. Appreciate everyone's time and very respectfully of everyone's time wanting to get going. 5:30 here. Of course, we'll max out at an hour and a half again and keep everyone on schedule. Didn't have a big speech to start or anything this time, but wanted to kind of review what we talked about for those that weren't here. Hopefully, if you didn't make it last time, you saw the tape. Last meeting, we started with a welcome and then went over the Inglewood survey results, which Jay Sanders presented us last meeting. And you know, that was great. A lot of support for STEM and STEAM at Inglewood Elementary, and learned a lot from the parents' opinions there. Then something really neat we did was go around and do a statement of need from the entire committee, which was very eye-opening and talked about the biggest needs you guys had at each school. And then we started to get into our longer-term discussions, and that's kind of where we're going to go this evening, hopefully get a little bit more into turnaround strategies, feeder patterns, and transportation issues. So first on tonight's agenda, though, you were just handed a new charter timeline review. So that's in front of you. Please take a look at that. If you do have any questions about it, let us know. You know, that's for you to take with you, though, and look at. We didn't want to go too deep into that or anything, but it's there for you. So if anyone has anything, let me know. Cool. Great. Well,
I'm curious, actually.
Yeah.
The survey that's released after the announcement, what is the purpose of the survey?
Just very briefly, just to get feedback from parents who attend the parent meeting. We really plan that to be in conjunction with parent meetings at the preferred schools, and we really want to reach out to all the parents in the school where we're proposing a change. The proposal will be, part of the proposal will be the KIPP conversion, but then the other part of that will be what other supports and opportunities we have for kids in that school, and we want to get some feedback on that.
And why is the survey scheduled to be done after the decision has been made rather than before?
It's not.
I guess after the preference has been stated.
Well, yeah, because there's further engagement with the families that's part of that, and the survey is part of that as well. And it's part of understanding their options, understanding what it makes a great school, what the transition might look like if it happens at that school, and then providing all of that information both to support the turnaround efforts that'll happen in the non-converted grades as well as the conversion efforts at the school. So it's all part of the process.
So I think probably let's go to the date for tomorrow, December the 4th. See if I can go through this pretty concisely. Tomorrow is the date that the board agenda is published. School board meeting for Tuesday the 9th. And in that board agenda, we're going to provide information on Inglewood and Kirkpatrick to the board. And we're going to identify tomorrow what we as an administration consider the preferred identification, the preferred school to convert to KIPP, and the reasons why. And then that action will be discussed, or that preferred status will be discussed at the board meeting on December 9th without a final decision. And then on December 15th, we're scheduling a parent meeting. December 16th, 15th and 16th, we're soliciting written feedback on the survey from parents, and a final decision not to come to January 13th. And we chose to spread that out when there were questions raised about whether we were getting adequate giving adequate time for input from parents, and so that's where that stretch came there. If we have been working all along on a timeline of making an announcement, making a decision by the first 2 weeks in December, and so it's just a deferral of that from December 9th through January 13th, which is the next scheduled Board of Education meeting, so that we can gather that additional input that's on the timeline.
Yeah, so just kind of weird timing. I mean, it really starts tomorrow, so nothing's really changed since the last meeting, except they've released this timeline. So I definitely, I'm glad you guys brought this. Wanted to show everybody the timeline, and certainly next meeting, if we want to also get into it a little further, we will as well. Jackson.
Real quick question. When you send out the survey, I think that there's a meaningful number of parents who are zoned for the schools that may have made other choices within MMPS. Will you be able to include them in the survey?
Yes, we want to do that, and we also want to look to future parents. One source of contact is for kids who are attending pre-K. We've got a large number of kids in our pre-K programs that are future parents in the zone of the preferred school, and we want to reach out to them too. So the attempt is to reach out in multiple ways to get as much input as we can.
What will you do if you find that the majority of the parents, like in the parent survey they did, don't want it? What is the plan?
Well, a part of it's not just a thumbs up and thumbs down.
Well, I know, but I mean, you don't want a hostile takeover.
Well, no, it's not a thumbs up or a thumbs down. It's a getting feedback on the services that we're talking about providing, the options that are available. We intend to talk about possibilities for transportation for that particular school that's identified, other choices that are available, and we want to get feedback there. The information that we get will be considered input, but we're still going to make, in the final analysis, we're going to make a recommendation on the school that we think is the one that will best benefit for a conversion.
Great. Cool. Now we wanted to continue discussion just from where we left off last time. Jerice was going to talk a little bit about turnaround strategies, and we'd like to just kind of open that up again and that topic and go from there.
As Councilman Davis kind of reviewed, we went over our statement of needs, and we learned that a lot of our schools in East Nashville are looking for wraparound services, heightened parent involvement, some clarity in information that's distributed within the community, whether about public charters or about our traditional neighborhood schools. We also talked about high expectations. We had some information about maybe the quality of our teachers and making sure that our teachers fit a school and its population, its demographics, that they are qualified to teach those types of students, because we know that because you're a quality teacher and you have an education or you have a degree in education may not mean that you are the best fit for a particular school. So we also talked about community involvement, making sure that our community partners, our business partners in education are available and willing to participate in making sure that all of our schools are great schools. I think we had a great discussion during the last meeting, and I want us to continue those conversations. We did talk a lot about labels and pathways and how we're going to either eliminate labels, how we're going to develop new topics, new models, education models for our schools, and ultimately if we're going to try in this particular meeting create some consistency within the pathways that we already have, so that, as John Gregory said in the last meeting, that parents have buy-in. They feel comfortable knowing that if I send my child to this school in elementary school, that they're going to have a clear path to a middle school and to a high school, and their middle school is going to be just as great as their elementary school was, and high school is going to be just as great as middle school. That they're not going to get left somewhere. They're not going to fall between the cracks and get left behind after a certain grade level. We all know, research shows us that, elementary school, we have, most of the time, we have great parent involvement, because those are our babies. And then we get to middle school and it starts to dwindle. In high school, we may have, obsolete parent involvement. And we have to find a way to ultimately change that and make it better and create these pathways that families are happy to be a part of, that they feel secure in. And they feel like their children are going to not only be academically sound, but they're also going to be dealt with as a whole child. That we deal with their social, emotional, academic levels, and that ultimately we have lots of schools in our community, all of them, that we all wouldn't mind our children going to. That we don't have to pick and choose or, as John Gregory said, be upset that we didn't get our first choice or our second choice on our list, that we are happy with all of our schools. So I want us to continue that conversation. I want us to discuss current concerns with our pathways, our feeders, just so that we know where we're starting. We need a starting point. It is open for discussion, as you guys feel necessary.
Can I just ask a quick process question?
Yes, sir.
It's on the substance. I apologize that I missed the last one, but I watched the video and I think it was a great discussion. And I think we can push forward even better than we did by if we had a little bit more material to work with. So I know at the first meeting, Jay Steele talked about the turnaround plans that are in process with the schools, and I know most of the private schools have a turnaround plan, and I know there is been an internal MNPS team that's been looking at data and sort of considering what to do. So I feel like if the task force agrees, I feel like having that data in front of us and be able to look at sort of what is going on with the schools, what data that group has been looking at, what the turnaround plans are, even as far as looking at, I looked at 2 weeks ago, you pulled out an optional choice application. It's kind of long and a little bit confusing. So I think potentially even there might be some ways we could think about making that a little bit clearer, but having all that in front of us as a group so that we have some stuff to look at might be a good idea.
Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing that up. One of the things we wanted to talk about in this part of the agenda is sort of a call for a data request. The district has offered to give us whatever we need. So yeah, I'd love to hear specifically from the team here what we want to see, what will help us at the next meeting. And I think we can take a deeper dive into that. We'll go ahead and make sure that's all ready for you. So if you guys have specific ideas, let's hear them and we can keep on the turnaround discussion.
And I think we do have a representative from many of the schools here, or many of the schools in East Nashville, and I think these individuals who are on the ground, say it like that, they're on the ground, and they can tell you what they see is happening. I know data is great, and we look at it, but it's never as great as firsthand. We know that literacy is a problem in our building, or we know that social emotional is a problem, is a problem in our building. Those types of things. I think that is what we're saying we want to have a conversation about today, because we can look at data and it still may not tell us what the underlying problem.
I'd like to see the turnaround plans, though, that each of the schools have. That would be great.
I think that would be an appropriate request.
great point, and I think they can provide that for us. Is there a turnaround plan only for the bottom 5%, or do all the bottom 25% have some sort of a strategy plan? I guess would be something to throw out.
Are you wanting? All schools have a school improvement plan. We've been working with the principals in the bottom 25%, the priority schools, and the 6 to 25%. We've asked each principal to take that school improvement plan and to really condense it into what they consider an immediate turnaround plan. The long-term plans will be developed by the end of March as part of the school improvement process and the new SIG grants, the school improvement grant process. So the only thing that's available now is what the principal and their leadership teams have developed. And it's not what we consider a long-term plan. It was immediate needs based on their school improvement plan. So when you say is there a turnaround place in place at the school, there will be by the end of March through a formal process. But right now, it's just an individualized plan that the leadership teams at the schools have created. They look different at every school based on their own data.
So is the school improvement grant, the SIG funding, is that the primary funding lever that we're using for the turnaround plans, or is there?
Only in the newly identified priority schools are eligible for the SIG. I think that's 8 of you. Like Jerry Baxter's one, Kirkpatrick is one, Inglewood is one. The other schools who are currently in the I-zone, they're in their 3rd year of their school improvement grant, so I know we can produce their turnaround plans in that format that's there. So the format will be the school improvement plan, but the state does require some tweaks to it, or differences in the formatting of it to fit the SIG grant application. Alan can speak on the schools who already have the SIG in place and what those turnaround plans they are available.
And can I ask just a quick I'm sorry, Alan, just a quick clarification. So the turnaround plans that are in place, there have been a couple that have been in place already, and then we're going to go through some more. Are they targeted? I guess my question is, are they formatted and created such that they respond to the SIG grant? Is that sort of how they're created? Yeah.
I do not have SIG, and I came in. So when I started with I-zone this year, we had to create a plan for our leadership team, and it was not based on any additional funding, but on the supports that we could provide the teachers and the students without funding. But how can we, within the current budget, the current school day, how can we provide interventions for every child, every teacher, in our system? But we did come in with a plan. It wasn't blind, and we turned it in to I-zone, and consistent with what the district was doing with the middle school strategic plan, those both were available, and I had them both available and turned them into the I-zone lead principal.
So, and I'm sorry, I'll shut up after this. But so I know, school improvement grant funding is one sort of revenue stream we can look at for turnarounds. So I guess the question is, are there other resources we can look at? Yeah. So certainly there would be, I guess there'd be other grant funding.
Title funds.
There's title funds. There are other, so there's local funds. There are other, I guess, outside, so communities and schools is sort of like another, and Alignment Nashville, and there are other sort of, I guess, resources you can look for. Absolutely. So I guess, is there a way to understand, I guess, the broad set of options you have? So you have a school and you say, look, we need to do a turnaround plan. What is the menu of things we can pick from? We've got SIG funding, we've got Alignment Nashville, we've got communities and schools. Here are all the things that we can sort of choose from to target at that school. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, and that's what, and Fred and Alan can speak on this also, and Chris. The committees that you referenced a while ago that have been working at the district level, we've been working on looking at a systemic approach, not school-based, on what are those menus of services that can, if a school needs behavior intervention or they need academic intervention, what are those options that they could choose from? Us not dictating to them what's there, but providing Miriam a set of choices, passages to deal with, or Olvea's bullying, or literacy partnership, or this menu of options that you can choose from what best fits your data in your school.
And that's the best approach, because if you're using funding to determine how you're going to provide support to the schools, it's not sustainable. So the plans have to be sustainable based on what the schools and what the teachers and the leadership teams can provide. If the funding goes away, you still want to be able to sustain all interventions that are in place and all the academic supports that are in place. And the only way to do that is to have a sustainable system that's not based entirely on a budget.
And there are parameters around that with the turnaround strategies that are identified at the federal level and the state level. That does guide our work, like effective leadership, effective teachers in the building, extended day or extended more time for kids, professional development, a relevant and engaging curriculum, human capital. I mean, those are all pieces of it, but the schools will determine what their plans from and have a menu of options.
And I think if we could ultimately start with last week we started with what we need, and then we can talk about those strategies, those turnaround strategies that we want to put in place, and then we can maneuver whether or not we have the resources, whether or not the resources are in our community. Maybe they're, right across the street from, our school, and they are willing to partner with us, and that leaves funding for something else. Right. That we don't really have to say, okay, we have to use this funding for this particular strategy. It can be, we need this strategy, and this strategy is available. For example, I don't think John Gregory would mind, but Community PTO is a great organization that funding, there could be funding for that somewhere in the district, but we don't have to use that funding from the district because they are willing to deal with some social emotional issues that we have within the school just by being a partner in education. And I think if we can start having a conversation about what strategies, maybe even putting out there community organizations that are willing to be partners in education with us. Go ahead and start listing those things so we can say this is a list of community businesses that are willing to help us. These are maybe individuals who are willing to help us, who aren't, they don't have children in the system, but they're willing to invest in the system. Let's do those things, and then we can maneuver how these strategies are going to work for each particular school. And I think that's a great place to start in the conversation of, what community business partners do we have that are willing to work with us, what individual families, groups, businesses that may want to work with us, and then work from there, and ultimately let the district be kind of like our savings. If we need something additional, we can go to our savings and ask them for, resources and funds for those particular things, and we make this community-based. And if we make this community-based, we have community people who can sustain their community instead of using those resources. And I think Jackson Miller had his hand up, and then...
Yeah, and one thing real quick, Jackson, I was just going to say, we have 12 schools that are in bottom 25 or priority schools. And, I think I'd love it if it's the will of the committee, though, if we come up with recommendations. Could be generic and broad-based for turnaround strategies, or we could have a few generic ones, and we could say for our 12 bottom 25% schools, we work with what Jay Steele provides us, and we create a plan from there, a little more individual-based. Obviously, it's a lot harder for us to get so granular on all these schools, so I'll leave that to the will of the committee as far as where we go, but I think we can at least come up with generic recommendations for the entire East Nashville area. Go ahead.
So I think John touched on something important that I don't want to get away from us, and that is in the sort of the what's our data request. Those immediate turnaround strategy documents that were created by the school leaders, I think would be helpful for us to get up to speed. If we could take the time to look at those and see what the school thinks they need, that would be helpful. So that we're not saying, what they really need is they need, air-conditioned school buses when no school leaders actually saying that would help them.
Those are available. We could turn those around very quickly.
That'd be awesome.
Well, I do. The one thing I would say about it, like Bailey's was 80 pages long, where another school like Inglewood's might have been 3 or 4 pages long. Bailey's is a more fleshed out plan because they've been in it in their third year. So they're going to look different for each school, but we can definitely get that for you. Jerice, you mentioned the business partners. So Pencil and Alignment are great resources for this committee. My team's already met with Pencil to look at the business partnerships in the priority schools and what are those partners providing. Is it cookies and donuts? Are they reading to kids? Or are they really coming in and working with teachers to design and deliver effective curriculum? And then meeting with those partners, which we've already been doing, to how can you really work during that prescribed response to intervention time and work with small groups of kids instead of just providing generic services, that you can really target what their skill deficits are. So that is beginning to happen. I think that's a great place. Alignment Nashville, if this committee comes out with recommendations like we need more partners around this particular literacy or numeracy or social emotional learning or wraparound, Alignment can release an ITP, an invitation to participate, to garner and gather the services that the community can provide and target a certain school. So those are two organizations that can do a lot of that work for you. And they're already doing a lot of that in our schools. I know they work with Miriam and Jerry Baxter.
Right.
And I think too, another part of this is, so I think sort of working with what existing organizations we have, but also another benefit of being able to look at the data. So I remember 2 months ago when we were sort of talking about getting this process started and we were talking about creating a community committee, there was some data that I think a lot of us probably saw that was the schools in East Nashville and how they were doing on the academic performance index. And there were some interesting things in there when you sort of looked at the data. I think it was Chadwell, or maybe Chadwell or Caldwell. One of them, and I get the two confused, and I feel bad about that. They sound similar. One of them had a very high mobility rate. In fact, higher than Kirkpatrick, but was achieving at a much higher level. And so I think being able to dig into that, and I assume this is probably something that you all are doing, that MMPS staff are doing, but I think that would be beneficial to the committee is zeroing in on the schools that are doing well despite difficult circumstances and looking at what are they doing right, what do their plans look like, and in fact, it might be beneficial for the committee to bring in that principal so we can say, hey, do we have some questions? We'd love to hear kind of what's going on at your school, what has the plan been, those kinds of things so we can get a little bit more informed, on the ground stuff.
Yeah, I'd love to know more about Warner. Like you were talking about Warner, it sounds like
Okay,
amazing.
I was just gonna say,
Yeah.
I kind of got into that in the last meeting about Warner and Warner's approach. I'll just kind of talk about it a little bit. Warner Enhanced Options Elementary School is where my daughter goes. She's in 4th grade. The principal there is Lori Fleming, and she has a great staff. I'm going to say that Warner is in a unique location. It is in the neighborhood of very prominent property, but it services children who are not in the socioeconomic level as the property that surround Warner, if that makes sense. Warner's principal has taken a social emotional approach to dealing with her children, with the students. There has been a large gain. Everybody knows she was awarded the highest level of growth. And she's done great. What has happened is she has the staff focus on social emotional issues, social emotional learning as a bottom basis of a tier. It's really like a triangle. The bottom base is social emotional. The middle is staffing. The top tier is parent involvement and community involvement, and then around it is academics. So all of these things lead out into academics. So what happens is, like, let's say on a regular day at Warner, she has 5 staff members doing several different things. Like one staff member is responsible for breakfast and medicine. That staff member makes sure that every student that is supposed to take medicine has received their medicine for that day, which means that they actually have to call and say, Did you take this? And they know that that's going to be the first 30 minutes of their day. And they make sure that they get medicine and they get breakfast and they sit for a while until everything is digested and they walk them back to class. One staff member does only SSA. Are there any extreme cases of SSA today? Where there's a child that has come and it's, like I said last week, it's 30 degrees and they have on shorts. We're going to have to deal with that. They cannot function and freeze at the same time. They can't learn and be cold. So we have a staff member that deals with those things. And then there's parents that come in from 7:45 to 9 o'clock. And we deal with things that other staff members could do, but it's like late sign-ins. Or making sure breakfast carts go where they need to go, or walking subs to a classroom, making sure that a sub gets to the classroom they're supposed to get in. Do you need anything else from us? Do you need me to make copies? Do you need me to take your, whatever it is? And then we have other parents who do not have children at Warner, who are investing in Warner early. They have 3-year-olds. They are coming in and they are doing reading, tutoring, literacy, proficiency, and they've been screened. We also do reading clinic, where we have those parents who don't have children in the building, who are willing to take the training and to help our students move forward. So we have all of those things happening at the same time. We have community PTO, where we may need extra, uniforms or things of that sort that are helping us. We have community in schools. They are doing excellent work at making sure that our students who may have traumatic situations at home, that those traumatic situations are taken care of so that they can learn at a level that students who don't have traumatic situations. I don't think we understand that some of their situations, they live a constant traumatic situation. It's not, my grandfather died today and I'm having a situational issue. It is, I am always living in a traumatic situation, which is something that has to be constantly dealt with. It's not one priority, like, oh, today we need somebody here, because it's not like counselors on hand, like they do when a student passes away or there's something tragic that happens. It's a constant revolving issue, which is how she approaches it. She has high expectations. When I mean high expectations, parents still need to, your baby's gonna sit here with me, with their notebook and their work until you come. You get off work at 3, they'll be sitting right here with me until 3, which is okay, that is fine. But the parents know. I knew the first time I walked in that she had high expectations for her parents. She had high expectations for the children, that these are things that they must be able to do. I will say that there are Vanderbilt counselors in the building. Martha O'Brien is in the building doing tutoring in the afternoons. The district is offering tutoring as part of the turnaround strategies and plans. There's so many options happening there for those students. They've seen, I said last time, I think it's 11-point gain in test scores and just over.
You mentioned the communities and schools. Is that what we're looking for as far as the wraparound services? Is that who does wraparound, or is that just a group that helps you guys? We keep talking about that. I'd like to get out what all we need.
We have 2 communities and schools board members.
Gotcha.
No, 3. We've got one sitting over there.
So, yeah. Sorry, if that is what that is, and then what are other wraparound services? Because we've talked about that a lot, and it sounds like a lot of our schools need that, and maybe the full bottom 25% needs it in some way. So how do we develop a plan for that for all these schools? And it sounds like we're doing really well at Warner with this.
Bailey has almost everything she mentioned. We have almost every single one of those things as well.
Yes, too, yeah.
You and I'm saying, my students, what would my day look like if I had all of those services? That's right. And the practice alone.
So mostly everything that you just mentioned was parent involved. You have a high volume of parent involvement in this?
I'm not gonna say we have a high volume of parent involvement. I'm gonna say we have a core group of parents that are involved. It's not a high number. We don't have 100 parents in the building.
Yeah, but
we do have
I mean, more than one.
We have committed parents. We have parents we have 10, and we have some grandparents there's some grandparents that can only come on Wednesday because that's the day they go to work late, which is fine. We just know that is the core committed group, which is really all you need is a committed group of parents to say, I'm willing to dedicate this amount of time, and it's not even, it's not 50. It's 20 on a great day, but not 20 all in the building at the same time. It's 7 on Monday, 7 on Tuesday, 7 on Wednesday. She said Thursday she has a parent tour, and she's not going to be able to do this part of what she normally does, so she needs 2 extra parents. So now we have 9 on that day instead of 7.
Yeah. Even like Dan Mills, it's a big school. It's like touted for parental involvement. I mean, I'm in charge of the volunteers. I struggle to get volunteers there, but we do have a few, committed parents, and I feel like that makes all the difference. I mean,
and I think that's really like the basis of making a priority school or a school in turnaround successful. That's if you were to look at a formula, you would say I need, number 1, a core group of parents. And then I need a consistent leader, somebody who's not going to move, not going to change. They're not going to switch my principal and take my principal somewhere else. They're going to leave if it's working. Now, if it's not working, then we can't we can't justify leaving a principal somewhere where it's not working. But if it is working, can we leave that consistency there so that those parents that committed, they committed to allowing things to evolve. It takes some time to see things evolve. And I think that is part of it. I think here we can develop what steps do we need to make a great school.
So it's something that, and this tacks on exactly what you were saying. So I think at Warner and at a lot of schools, there are, and we talked about this, sort of the diversity of services available. There's a lot of programs, and there's parent support, and there's communities in schools, and there's community in chiefs, and there's alignment. And I feel like, especially for the turnaround schools, for these bottom 25%, the priority schools, we need to be thinking about program evaluation. So something that I really like about the communities in schools model is it's a very rigorous. They say, here are our goals for the year. This is what we want to do. We want to reduce the number of office visits for this child. They set the goal. And then they intervene over the year. And at the end of the year, you see, did we hit that goal? And it's school specific and it's child specific. And you see, is it working or is it not working?
And I think, and I was going to ask Miriam, if is built into the turnaround plan that you've had any sort of assessments that throughout the year, we know what services have been effective or yielded results.
So we have academic achievement assessments that we have built in to provide interventions for students. But the program evaluations, because we just received the 21st Century Grant, and NASA has been at our school, I think, 2 years. And I haven't seen the assessment from the previous year for that. But we would have to create surveys for the parents that are in those programs to determine how it's working for us right now. And at this moment, both of those, the 21st Century Grant and the NASA After School Tutoring programs are at capacity right now. So we have about 70 kids that are participating in after school programming there. So right now would be a great time to evaluate this semester.
So can we develop maybe a not flushed out, but a quick model of a successful school? For example, we know that parent group is important. We are understanding about community in schools. And who knows, we maybe could develop our own version of whatever we need. We know that the district has partnered with communities in schools. We have Community Achieves. We have to make sure that it's sustainable. What if community in schools is no longer available? to our district, how are we going to make that work for us, even if the community and schools model is not here?
But I think focusing on, there's lots of touchy-feely things that can make a building feel warmer and not necessarily yield measurable progress. And I think we need to be committed to applying interventions, social, emotional, academic, whatever category, but that yield a measurable result. I mean, our goal is to get these schools out of the bottom 25%. And so there needs to be assessment. I mean, and you can measure social emotional things. That's what makes communities and schools, as an example, different from some other social emotional supports, because, there is ongoing assessment. Data-driven assessment, data-driven instruction, we've learned, is very effective in the classroom, because you don't have to wait until the end of the year to see, did my children learn? We should know, that should be built in. I would encourage us all to keep that in the forefront as we think about, yes, let's incorporate more tutoring. Let's hold any of these services that we're asking to be brought in to have ongoing assessments to measure whether it's worthwhile. If there's an investment of time or money, then that should yield some measurable results.
And I think we have to look at some formative assessments as well, because we have to look at some assessments that may, for example, I taught a grade level. Well, I may have had students that were 4 grades lower than where they should have been. Well, that assessment only really assessed them at that grade level. Were they at a 9th grade reading level? Well, no, they weren't at a 9th grade reading level, but they came to me at a 4th grade reading level. And if they came to me at a 4th grade reading level and I got them to a 7th grade reading level, that does show that growth. So we need to make sure that the assessments are holistic assessments that not only assess them where in the grade level in which they are in, but also in the growth in which the teacher or the school has made, because that may be an important part.
Sure.
Catherine, we do have lots of things that we track with behavior already with the Positive School-Wide Behavior Plan. I just wanted to say that.
Oh, thank you. No, Marion had spoken up, so that's good to hear.
But I have something that I've kind of put together that might help us start thinking about things.
It's Dr. Paget's birthday too, so wish her a happy birthday. We don't need to sing, but everyone should know it's her birthday.
Okay, and we're back. I promise I won't make it longer. Just because I hand out doesn't mean I will go long. I promise. And I'm going to try not to cry this week. So when I think about turnaround strategies, this is not, let me first preface this by saying this is not our Inglewood turnaround plan. This is kind of our wish list of things that a lot of times we felt like our hands were tied, and these are some things that I think we could do as a district that would help us quickly turn around schools, because, I mean, there's a need, there's a definite need. So my first bullet up there is the faculty professional development. If you're going to turn around a school, you have to be a team, and these are some of the most powerful things that I think could be in that 2 weeks of PD together as a team before school starts. The district offers a poverty simulation that is out of this world great. I learned more from that this year than probably most of the PD I've ever been to. I would highly recommend every struggling school to participate in the poverty simulation. The next one is an actual text that I've been reading, and it's fabulous. And I think that if we could get Howard and Dresser to come in and do some PD with faculty, that would be great. If not, we could do the pieces in the book that are they're just unbelievable. One of the things that we've implemented this week is a 2020 club that came from the book, and we are pairing up every adult in the building, our custodians, our cafeteria managers, our teachers, everybody, with a child that is either struggling behaviorally or has some trauma going on at home, and giving them somebody to talk to, and each adult is committing to 20 minutes per week for 20 weeks so that they can have that person that's in their corner. Accountable Talk helps kids take ownership of their learning regardless of where they are. I think a lot of issue in many of our struggling schools is, and I think you've even said this, is the fact that the students aren't engaged. We put Accountable Talk at Englewood last year, and I can't even tell you what it did for our fourth graders as far as engaging them in the content that they were working with. And then team building is a must. I think we've learned from enhanced option schools that the lower ratios will help. They're also extended day, which we might want to add in there. And then with faculty and staff, we need great teachers on board with the administrator. If I'm a great teacher, but I'm combative with the administrator, that's not going to be conducive to learning in the building. I think every struggling school needs an assistant principal, regardless of their numbers, because typically there are a lot of behavioral issues, and there's much more, there's many more visits that need to be made to the classroom, and the principal can't be everywhere that he or she needs to be, but an assistant principal could help alleviate some of that. Highly trained interventionists at each grade level. It's impossible to move children from 4 grade levels behind without somebody that can do that in your face teaching and they know what they're doing. So I think that that's important. A wraparound coordinator could bring in the community pieces from outside, and that could be a full-time job. One of the things that we've talked about in many of our meetings is a time where we have like a fair where the parents are able to come and they can talk to people from all the different types of community resources that they have. So everything's right there and available, so they don't have to figure out transportation to go find clothing for their children or whatever their needs are. And then a family involvement coordinator. We all know that pulling in our families is important. I think a lot of times students from high poverty, their parents are intimidated by school, and I think that if we had a family involvement coordinator that could help them, a lot of things that traditionally parents have helped kids with in the past are things like spelling tests. Well, we do word study now, which is much more higher level thinking, and so we kind of jerk that away from our parents, and they don't have those lists to go through. So we need to give them some alternatives to help their child and ways to get them in. And then eventually you're going to have new teachers, and new teachers always struggle. I know as a new teacher, I did 100 years ago, but when you're in an inner city struggling school anyway, you really struggle. And so I think a great plan, bouncing off of something that Jay Steele said in our first meeting, would be to put a mentor teacher and a new teacher in the classroom for an entire year together, so they have that student teaching almost again, but it's more hands-on, and they have those same kids all year long, so that it could be 30 students if you combine those 2 smaller classes together, and then that next year that teacher could go out on their own. And then I kind of hit on the accountability piece last meeting, because with accountability, we can't start at the top with elementary and build it down. We've got to start at the bottom and build that foundation. And obviously the charters know that that's a plus. So looking at tracking for the first year, you could track pre-K through first grade as their accountability piece, and let that principal grow that foundation first. We have universal screeners that could be administered by an outside team if we needed to have more separation from the school, so that we knew for sure that it was a valid and reliable piece. But 85% would match the RTI that comes from the federal government. And then the second year, add second and third, and then use universal screeners and standardized measure. And then third year, look at everybody. And then over on the right side, I have, those are just pieces of research and from educational gurus that support the pieces that are on the left. But then down at the bottom, I went through the data for metro schools, all of the elementary schools. I apologize to my middle school friends. But I looked at, okay, what schools have had at least a 15% jump in the last 2 years. And so these are the schools that have high poverty, well into the 90s, but also have made at least a 15% or more jump somewhere in the last 2 years. You can see that of those, we have 3 that are already iZone, already receiving extra supports, and then 5 that are enhanced option, which again have smaller class sizes and a longer day, which could contribute to that. We have 3, Inglewood, Alex Green, and Tom Joy. But what I'm saying is let's go find out what they're doing instructionally. I can tell you that the year that, not this past year, but the year before that, when we had our big jump, we were focusing at Inglewood on small group instruction because that's what we believe. We believe in order to help our students, because we have some that are down here and some that are up here, we've got to have that in your face teaching. And so we focused on guided reading with literacy, and our focus for math was small group instruction as well. And it made a difference that year.
What was the 15% jump at Inglewood?
We had 15% overall when you average the 3 subjects, science, math, and literacy. I can show you the data if you'd like to see.
Yeah, I would like to see it.
Very interesting stuff, and really appreciate you putting this together. This is fantastic. You did your homework, because we did ask for turnaround strategies info, so someone did the homework assignment for sure. And, I think this is awesome, and this could be something, as we get the specific plans, the immediate turnaround plans, I think maybe this committee could come up with recommendations like this, and if we combine sort of the parent piece, that I think is a whole nother sort of set of recommendations from what you were talking about, that we've got some pretty good suggestions and things we can implement.
I just want to ask a quick question about resources, because I think this combines this turnaround strategies piece with what Jerese was talking about. So I think there's some things that successful schools do that aren't really a funding kind of issue. It's engaged parents and volunteers and connection to the community. But I think there are some things that successful schools do that are tied into funding and resources. If you look at smaller class sizes, that's a funding issue. You have to have enough teachers to be able to have a smaller student-teacher ratio. You look at having an additional assistant principal, interventionists, wraparound services, those kinds of things, family involvement. Those are all sort of funded positions. And so I think it seems like so far we're all being very diplomatic, and we're saying, well, let's work within our existing resources, and we need to make sure it's sustainable, and that's good. But I would challenge the group to think about, we can make recommendations to say, these are the schools that are hurting in the district. These are the students and the families that need help. And if we're going to be serious about helping these schools and these students, we need to put our money where our mouth is and fund whatever interventions we need to fund. So part of it is the community engagement and parent involvement. But part of it is, look, if we want smaller class sizes, we have to commit to funding that. So this ties into my sort of earlier questions to Jay about, is it just SIG funding, or are we looking at making a recommendation? And I would advocate for this, to say the district needs to set aside an actual turnaround budget and say this money is earmarked for turnarounds. And we're going to fund those interventions. And you look at the number of schools, and we have a $190 million budget or something like that. You look at what the percentages are. And I think it's a challenge to think about reallocating the funds to where they need to be. So I would push the group to think about that.
Didn't Alan mention a couple of weeks ago about having weighted student funding? So I think that is a fabulous idea. I think that is a really positive direction in terms of funding.
So that we're finishing that weighted student funding formula plan to present to the board in this year's budget. It will make some difference. The big decision, though, and we've actually used a consultant who's done this on a national basis to help us look at ways to do that. The other piece that goes with that is autonomy, and that is giving school planning teams flexibility in determining how they use the funds they have. And John, to answer your question about other resources that are available, of course, we have a large federal programs budget. That's essentially money that goes to, but the large bulk of it goes to funding schools that have high levels of poverty. But then the final piece is the operating budget. And our budget's actually $800 million, right at $800 million a year. What we've gone through, I can use Race to the Top as an example. We had a $30 million budget with Race to the Top over a 5-year period of time. And we implemented a lot of things there, and we kept those things and incorporated those things that were working into the operating budget. And that's making decisions like, Catherine, like you were saying about are we analyzing what works and what doesn't work? And the answer is yes, and it's on an individual school basis. So all of that comes into play now, and is important for us to talk about now as we prepare this year's budget and look at ways to modify that.
I've mentioned it before, but Buena Vista, if you want to talk about class size and getting the student-teacher ratio down, they have some extra money with iZone, but that wasn't all just extra resources that allowed them to put 2 teachers in every classroom. That was principal autonomy, where they chose to not have any other non-teaching positions in the building, essentially, right?
And the class size went up. They raised class size to be able to afford 2. Alan can talk about this more specifically than anybody else, but it's a really good strategy, and I think one that we need to look at in other schools. We've talked about that. Alan, you want to speak to the way that they do
You
that?
basically got it. It's investing also and developing partnerships with local universities so that you have pre-service teachers who are also engaged in that sort of direct mentoring and direct learning even before they become full-time teachers, and that's created a pipeline that keeps this going too.
Yeah, getting those right leaders in place and having that autonomy is something we've discussed a lot. We had a parent over here that wanted to speak real quick.
I just wanted to say some of my ideas were also the same: parental involvement, more resources, Metro Nashville public school staffs that can keep up with child's folders, attendance, medicine.
Thank you.
Part of that is the wraparound services, and I think just very quickly, we have 2 programs that serve in complementary ways, but not the same way. Communities in Schools is basically a staffing plan where there's a person with a caseload of kids, and then Community Schools provides more general wraparound services in the school. And we see both of those as important and complementary. We don't have both. I don't think we have both in any one school. We do have both in some schools. And I think that's really important to provide a lot of the service that you're talking about.
You were going to say.
Well, I was just going to say, at Bailey, we do have the Vanderbilt Aspiring Teachers Program. I think a couple of the iZone schools do that. And that is a great pathway to keep teachers. We did end up hiring several teachers from last year to continue working at Bailey. They know the kids, they know what they're getting into, and they have a year of experience working with a mentor teacher going into it. So that's been really helpful. And again, getting our class sizes down tremendously. So I was just going to add on that.
They're also at Warner. You have those aspiring teachers that are in the building and ultimately helping with manning to, when you have more adults, then, a lot more gets done. That's just the bottom line for that. Jay had wanted to take that.
And I guess this is, tomorrow's a big day for Inglewood or Kirkpatrick. And as much as I think this panel is a brilliant idea and something that can be replicated all across the city, it's just a great way to get sustained involvement from the community, breaking us down into little pockets of constituencies. It's extremely distressing and frustrating to hear that individual schools notwithstanding, individual principals' autonomy or lack thereof, the things that Dr. Steele has said on several occasions, and Dr. Covestone and Dr. Register, about things that are beginning to happen at the district level, and the fact that both Inglewood and Kirkpatrick are first-year priority listed schools, and one of us is going to become a charter, whether the parents like it or not. I just want to express my frustration with the fact that this hasn't been addressed more strongly. I know it's been addressed, but more fully over the years that we've been tracking the APF and all the other measures that we've been using to see school performance. And, it is what it is, and I'm glad we have this panel to move forward and to try to eliminate this process next year and the next year and so on. But just as a parent at one of these two schools and knowing the parents that I do know at the other school, it's just really frustrating to hear that this hasn't been going on longer.
And I'm glad that you said that, because I was sitting here starting to think, like, what's my problem? Because I'm listening to all of you, and I'm listening to all the ideas, and I'm saying, well, where was this when we were on the list all these times? We just got an assistant principal at Kirkpatrick. As far as I know, they've been asking for an assistant principal at Kirkpatrick, but we couldn't get one because of our numbers. We just got one because Mildred Nelson is the lead principal. So that is the way we were able to get an assistant principal. And so I'm listening to all these things. I'm listening to what you said about Moyer. And I'm saying, well, okay, what about Kirkpatrick? So now we're throwing out all of these things. But it's possible that we could be going into being a charter tomorrow, like you said, whether the parents want it or not. Because our parents have pretty much said that they didn't want it, as far as I know. And so I'm glad that you said that, because I feel the exact same way that you do. Because I'm saying, where was all of this discussion? Where were all of these resources when we were going through this? Now, here we are, and we want to start doing something, but it's too late for one of us.
I haven't been here long, and I can say this has clearly been the elephant in the room, because I came here and, clearly everybody had a specific school they wanted to go to. So this is not a new issue, and just coming in, I knew this wasn't a new issue. It's just been a quiet issue. It's been an issue that's been hiding behind the can I get my child into this school? If I can get my child into this school, then I'm not going to say anything about any other school. And now we're realizing we can't do that, because one day it may be our child.
That's exactly it. And like I was saying at the last meeting, history has repeated itself. And to me, it feels like East Nashville has been a guinea pig. I'm from that area. I've been through different schools here in East Nashville, and we're looking at the teachers need to be accountable, and the principals need to be accountable, but also our school board needs to be accountable. There needs to be some way where we can see some record of your progress, because there shouldn't be where these schools have been suffering for like this long. And you're speaking to a former student from East Middle School when it was a zone school, and how we changed that into a literacy magnet because the issue then was literacy, which is still some of the issues that we're having now. We had mobility issues back then, and we created the special transfer request where a parent had to put in that request of why they want their child to move. We don't have that now, but you tell us that we have data saying that these kids went to this school. How do you know that? When you're telling me here at this meeting that we cannot even find out where these kids went to who just left like a day or so ago. So it's kind of contradictory. And so we need that consistency of that and knowing, what's really going on behind the scenes, because we can only do so much. And the schools can only be as great as their leaders. And quite frankly, the board is the leaders. And so it all needs to replicate in some type of manner. And even looking at Laughlin is great, but I remember when they shut the doors on Laughlin as well. And so this thing has all circulated, and it was like my parents who were going to churches and community centers, and everyone else in that neighborhood was fighting for the cause and going to the board members about it. And then it was like, oh, well, we have lottery now, and that's even causing more issues because you go to the playground, it's like, oh, well, you go to Laughlin, well, I go to Inglewood. Oh, I can't speak to you because of that, because I wanted to go there and my child didn't get accepted in. Or issues live side by side with a neighbor who was, our kids went to daycare together, and it was an issue that my son got into Laughlin and hers didn't. Like, that's not the atmosphere that you want to have, and that's causes conflict, and no one wants to say why they don't want their kids to go to that school. Or you have media saying your school is failing, but then you're not telling us, why are we failing? What's going on? What can we do as parents? Because like I said, we have younger parents now, but a lot of us are not knowledgeable of what's going on, and so we're just taking it as is. Oh, well, this sheet of paper says that this school is failing, let me take this child away, when it could be something that they can do. You never know the talent that you have within those walls or who that parent is of that child that could be that blessing for their school. So I feel like this strategy plan from Ms. Padgett is wonderful, but we need to add the school board on that as well. We need to see that. You hire great principals, Ms. Harrington, I don't even know you that well, but I'm impressed with what you do, and I really want to piggyback on what you said, and I believe it maybe was the last meeting or before that when you said the individualized academic plan. We really need something like that to really see, let's look at all of these students that are in these schools and in East Nashville and see what's going on, because it's a bigger issue than that, and everyone, even the teachers, need to be assessed as well.
Thank you for your comments, Angelica. And I just wanted to say, I feel like as a community, in some ways we failed. I mean, I think the district has done a good job of acknowledging the failure of some of these schools. Certainly, we're all trying to get together and work this out, figure out what we can do. We've had a lot of WIFM in East Nashville. What's in it for me? What's up with my kid in my school? We've all got to be accountable to all these schools too. And I'm not shirking the responsibility of the school board, the district, the council, everybody, but the community too. I mean, I'm really glad we're all getting together and saying, hey, we should have done this years ago. Yes, you're exactly right, and in a lot of different ways. And we as a community, we're the taxpayer. There are schools. These are our people that work for us. These are our schools. So we're here getting together and exactly what you're saying, but we've got to take the responsibility as the community.
And I think that's what we can do here. We can develop that particular model that says, this is what we want our schools to look like. And we can, really just say, listen to the district, this is what we like. This is what we see.
For the meantime, we're losing a school. That's a school that belongs to us.
But we have to be clear that in the process of recovery, you must lose something. That sometimes it just happens like that you can't recover all.
Yes.
My
grandparents
we want to recover everything, but it's really difficult to recover all. However, we want this to be where we don't have to say this again, where we don't have to go through this particular, and these parents will say, I've done this. And I know that you're going to have to change in order to not have this happen to you. And that's one of those things that we're going to have to let sink in, that we may lose something, but we can recover more than what we lost, if that is possible.
Some folks that haven't talked, so want to definitely spread around.
I'm sorry, what school are we losing?
Well, we have two schools that are we have Kirkpatrick and we have Inglewood that are on the table for a KIPP conversion at this time because they are on the priority list.
Okay,
And tomorrow there will be a announcement of a preferred. Now remember, there will not be a final decision until January 13th.
And keep in mind, these are still our schools. They're
Yes.
privately run, public charters, taxpayer money. There are buildings. We own the buildings.
Yes.
So just, yeah.
Okay,
keep it.
also, what, we're talking about doing something different. When are we going to start doing this, and how much time do we have to implement what you all are projecting?
Well, I think that's it. If we can come to consensus that we're going to lose a school, technically not lose it, but it's not going to be what it was before. It's going to change. And then we move forward, then we can start implementing these things. Because ultimately we have a group here and we're going to try to develop a model and say this is what we want our schools in East Nashville to look like. But then we have to get the district to buy into that model. We also have to have principals into that model, because before we know it, it'll be the end of the school year. And we want these things to be in place.
Right, that's the reason I was asking, because I guess when they said 15, 16 year, we're already almost to year 2015.
We're almost there.
So what do we do now? What do we need to do now? What does Jerry Baxter need to do now?
We need to develop the model.
How much time do we have to do this for us to?
I don't think we should look at a timeline. We should do as much as we can, as quick as we can.
Can we talk about I want to, pour a little cold water on this model idea for a second. If I look at the highest growth schools in Nashville, 4 of them are charters, 3 of them are magnets, and 3 of them are zone schools. That's the model I want, right? I want there to be schools of varying types that are high achieving, high improving, high growth schools. I don't think we're losing a school. I think we're changing a building. And I think we're making progress. Last year, we shut down Ross and turned it into a pre-K. It's been a good thing for the community. When we shut down that school, there was not this same uprising, and we did not end up with a parent group doing this. So now we have a parent group, right? We have involved parents that weren't here last year. I don't know where everybody was last year, but they weren't screaming out when we shut down Ross.
Yeah, where were you? Did you not have an issue? I mean, I don't think casting blame about that does anybody any good. We're here now, and I think we all have the ability to express our opinions about what needs to happen with our school. So I take your point that progress is good, but I think the continued refrain of, oh, where's everybody been? I think we've all talked about, where's the district been? And so I don't think that point is well taken. I get irritated when people bring that up.
Well, we're all here now. We're all here to move forward. So let's keep it productive and a little less direct, please.
A question that I have is just to get you all's opinion. What is the number one reason why we want to refrain from converting into a charter? Because a lot of the resources that we're talking about that we need in these schools are things that are being implemented at a charter level. So I don't understand, and please help me understand what the biggest concern is with converting into a charter, because if we want most of these services that we've already put on the table, and we've talked about last meeting, eliminating the label, if we look at the model of what they're doing, I don't understand where the concern is for converting to that model.
My problem is that it's run by a board of directors rather than the school board, and which our voters they're accountable to voters. That's my personal.
Yeah, there's.
Plus, I don't like for my child. I don't like the no excuses model. Like I'm not concerned about it. For my kid personally, I want her to have art, music, PE, playtime, recess.
Yeah, and that's a really big question, which is you're thinking on another level, definitely. But we could certainly go into that. I don't want to get into this versus that thing.
I think we really need to stay focused on.
Right.
We want highly functioning, effective schools for every child. Period. In Metro. Period.
Exactly.
Right.
That's which is great, and I think that's what we need to stay focused.
And I think we can put, when Jackson says there are models like they're the magnet schools and public charter schools and zone schools that are working, we can pull things from all of those schools and say this is what looks best for us. Maybe every every policy and procedure at the charter level does not work in our particular school. However, we can take this part and create what we need, because that's really what this committee is about, creating something new, because we've tried all the other ones.
Yeah, and creating, we're recommendations. I want to stick to, we're giving the district our recommendations.
Yes.
So maybe the model word wasn't necessarily, that got kind of into magnets and that sort of thing, but we want to create a list of recommendations. And Jeremy, it was nice to hear from you.
I had one thing when we go forward with this plan for the perfect school and how we're never going to let this happen again, I think what must be in place somewhere in this plan is what are the repercussions to the individuals who are actually paid to make this go forward and work? What are the repercussions if this does not work? That person or that group of persons should not receive salary. All right, I will tell you right now, we say we have to lose a school. We say last year nobody was crying out when we lost a school. I will tell you, if the person or persons responsible for the school being lost did not receive their pay, there would either be outcry or that school would not be lost. That's my point.
Can I bring the focus back to the students and the achievement? However, we notoriously, it's an issue about an adult's job, and we need to bring the focus to what Miriam was saying, a quality school for every child. Reframing the language of loss and saying that we are looking to make a high-quality school, label aside, focusing on the students.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think all you're saying is this one thing's happening already. We've got that, that's happening, that's on the shelf. And the timing is starting tomorrow for the timeline we mentioned earlier. So we want to keep talking about our turnaround strategies, our recommendations that we're going to be giving them. And even, we've only got about 15 minutes left, so do we want to?
Let's talk about current concerns with our pathways and feeders, because that really does affect what strategies we need.
Yeah, I think we've got a little time to get into that, and I do want to mention, we will get turnarounds back, in general, back on the agenda, because next time we're going to have the quick improvement plans from all the 12 schools, and that will be sent out in advance, and we'll continue the discussion on that.
Can we make that, I just want to asterisk that, can we make that list before we leave of what it is that we want as a group? Like, so the turnaround plans,
that was the one. Is there any other data?
Turnaround plans?
I think there's other data, I think. I mean, y'all, the district can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's other data that the working group has been looking at, some academic performance data and that kind of stuff that might be useful.
Yeah, there's a data analysis on each school. They're not quite complete, but the last piece of that data is results from the instructional rounds. And I think we had a couple of schools that we might be finished with now, but the data's not compiled. Those reports on all the priority schools will be available within a week or two. Actually, the board's receiving those tomorrow on Inglewood and Kirkpatrick, because that data is complete on those two schools. So we can, I don't see any reason why we can't provide that. It'll be a good bit of paper that might be better to do electronically.
If we're throwing out,
if everybody has an email address, so that might be a better way to distribute it.
Do we have a contact list? That's usually the first thing you do as a committee. Do we circulate some kind of?
I think we do.
I'm going to look to Alan and Jay about when we think that data analysis will be done on all priority schools.
The one missing piece are the instructional rounds, which will finish tomorrow, and then that will be written up. So it'll be about a week before we're finished with all 13 of them.
But the working group has been looking at stuff for a couple months at this point.
All the data is there.
Yeah,
The one missing piece is the instructional rounds.
Okay. So we'll get that out, and then it'll be on an email with everybody.
I have a question, because I was under the impression that there were going to be several instructional rounds, because I know you're talking about you're compiling the data. We have one instructional round and they came at 8 o'clock in the morning, so they saw like breakfast and morning meeting.
They stay for 4 hours.
At Kirkpatrick?
Yes. Each one goes from about 8 to 11:30 to 12, and then there's a debriefing at 11:30. So
Was that, my question was that the only?
it's the only district-sponsored one, and then each school is supposed to continue the process with their principal and their leadership team.
And this is our second one. That was our second one we had today.
Can we also add on the request, maybe some trends and pathways, current trends and pathways?
And by trends, you mean like where people are choosing to go? Okay.
Yeah,
I know
I was
they
gonna
have,
say,
you guys
so
have some of that.
I think we have
Yeah.
a breakdown on where, so for each school, you have where the students are coming. So like for Lytton, there are kids that are not zoned for Lytton that are coming from other zone schools. Like we have the breakdown on where the kids are coming from, right?
I think we already have that compiled out for all of East Nashville schools. It's just a spreadsheet, actually, just numbers.
Is it school-based where kids are coming from, or is it address-based where kids are coming to?
Yeah, I need to look at the report firsthand, but the way it breaks down is, it breaks down on like where students are going to, like, so students that are enrolled in Lockland, what school zones are they from? And so I don't know, we probably have it even both ways, a to and a from, but you can, yeah, so is there a certain way that you want it? Do you want the from and the to, or? I think
that's both. It's probably good.
Okay.
Can we also get, I know it's hard, but some attempt at mobility data? If we're going to talk about
Yeah, we have that too. That's really, and I'm looking to Fred because we started looking at an analysis of mobility, how many times kids move, where do they go, and particularly, and I'll tell you why, I want to know how many children move inside of East Nashville as opposed to moving out. And that has implications for transportation planning. So if we want to do things that will allow children to stay at the same school, even if their parents have to move a couple of times, are we capable of doing that in an East Nashville corridor, or not? And so, Fred, will you speak to that, or Chris, want to speak to what we have on that mobility data now?
We look at the number of times that a kid moves during the year. We look at where they go in 10 broad categories: in-state, out-of-state, NMPS. If it's in our district, what school do they go to? What day they left? What day they arrived at the new school? We also look at the bigger numbers and percentages for mobility. How many left, how many came in, plus the big numbers. It gets really, really detailed. That would be my only caution.
Fred, to simplify it, could we say, so for example, at Jerry Baxter, they requested records from Bailey this many times last year, and they requested records from East this many times last year, and from Lytton this many times?
I could probably move it to Excel and Drive.
Can we make sure to, and I think this will help us in our comparison, to make sure to include, I want the group to be able to compare bottom 25% schools with schools that are doing it well. So the schools that are growing and are doing well, so in East Nashville, Lockland, and KIPP, and the rest of them, so we can kind of compare like what's going on.
So what we have, this is the academic performance framework. And have we given you, everybody has a copy of that?
No, I just brought this from school.
We can forward. This has got 12 pages and it's very detailed. What this does is this is a list of all schools, and it lists the mobility rate. And so you can see a comparison of Inglewood, which I think is 41%, and Kirkpatrick, or Warner, which I think is 39%. I looked at those two a while ago. And you can get that kind of data here. If you're talking about where they come from and where they go, that's a huge data file. And it's pretty hard, you have to ask more specific questions than that to really get something that's intelligible, I think.
Or look at it school by school.
Yeah,
Look at it school by school.
Focus on individual schools.
Well, yeah. If I remember right, I think the notebook, and I'm looking at one right here, has a one-pager on East Nashville schools that lists the academic achievement, and then it'll list the mobility and chronic absent key rates.
Sure.
I don't know,
I think that's a good start, but I think what Jackson is pointing out and then what we're talking about is I think it would be useful to get a little bit more granular in terms of, because to understand, to be able to put together a comprehensible transportation plan and a comprehensible equitable choice plan, you have to understand where the student movements, where the patterns are in East Nashville. And so if a lot of kids are coming out of Casey, coming out of Kirkpatrick and going to KIPP, or they're coming out of Casey and Kirkpatrick and they're going to, Inglewood or Lytton or somewhere, understanding those patterns to be able to deal with it, I think is important.
That's actually slightly different. That's the pathway, right? You go from Kirkpatrick to KIPP, that's your pathway, or your where you go to.
But choice too.
Middle. Yeah, but that's going from elementary to middle. I'm talking about mid-year transfer.
No, and I misspoke. I meant, they're choosing. You just need to understand the choice.
Choosing a different
so if you're zoned for here and you're going here.
So I think we're going to end this one on making sure that we understand what data we are asking for our next meeting. We're asking for a current trends and pathways, if that is possible, mobility analysis, instructional rounds data, if you have that, if that's available, academic performance data, school improvement plans, and turnaround plans that are in place by the principal, because we know that the official ones are not final until March. Is that correct? Are there any other requests for data at this time?
Just a question. I've heard discussion about bottom 25% in East Nashville schools. What schools? And I heard John talk about comparison to other schools. We've got 150 schools, we could run it, but...
No, just East Nashville. It would be the 12, East Nashville bottom, and then any higher performing East Nashville schools is what he's saying. Yeah, just a couple.
Including charters, because I think it's important to be able to learn what...
Dan Mills, KIPP, those kind of schools.
So one of the things that we did is look at that mobility rate simply to rank order. We know that Buena Vista has the highest mobility rate in the district, 76%. Unbelievable. But it's also being successful. It's making progress. And so that's the kind of analysis that we want to do. And we can give you pretty easily, it's already here, the mobility rate by school and rank order that. So do the low performing schools have a higher mobility rate? The transportation plan that we're looking at has two components. One is how do we use transportation to better provide equitable choice? The second strategy is how do we use the transportation plan to reduce mobility so that children get to stay in the same school. So you got a couple of different purposes there. We'll try to provide.
When will we get a sneak peek at what you guys are working on too? That would obviously be great.
I have a question about, I actually asked, but it was through Twitter, so it didn't get answered. When parents are say somebody lives at KC and they want to send their kid to Dan Mills, which is a distance. It's close, but it's, far. If that parent doesn't have transportation, can they also get, with your partnership with MTA, a bus pass? What if the kid gets sick during the day? That's something, that's something that a parent thinks about, is ability to get to their kid.
I think also the community engagement part is a question there, because if my kid's going to school across town, then my opportunities for engaging at that school have been reduced.
Right, and for going to conferences, and so that would be something that y'all need to consider, I think. And y'all do have a partnership with the high school kids.
Are you saying for the parents?
Yes, I mean, because, I mean,
Just picture
if your
being a
kid, like if my kid gets, no, the parent.
I mean, it happened years ago because we used to have a pass called the Easy Rider Pass. But all the kids had it.
You
was
see
like
your kid on-
18
Well, and kids can ride the MTA bus for free now. That was in our budget last year. High school, yeah.
So we're looking at,
Not elementary.
we've actually, for those of you who have an east connection, we've had a lot of interest at East Middle School. Parents asking, can they access the free bus passes also? And that's an area that Fred works on with MTA, and that's a Metro Council, school board funding issue too. We spend quite a bit of money on those bus passes.
So-
We want to look at how to expand it. That's a budget issue this year and a decision to make it along the way.
I mean, I know that would be, if I didn't have a car and I wanted my kid to go to a certain school, but if they got sick in the middle of the day, that would be a huge
Part
concern.
of the conversation today.
Yeah, and I think we're going to get deeper into that next time, so bring all your transportation concerns and, yeah, anything you guys have that you do want to show us, that would be awesome since you're over there working on
Hey,
it.
can I say one thing before you?
Yeah, please, and then we'll adjourn.
I don't remember when you started as a superintendent here, but I was reading something the other day.
2009.
2009. Okay, so a year or two before you started, when was it Pedro Garcia who was still superintendent? Isaac Litton was on the list for closure. So I just want to point out that a lot can happen, and it seems like a long time, but really it's a short amount of time. Dan Mills completely changed over a 5-year period, and that's not to take anything away from anybody. It's to say that all of the pieces came together. And as the pieces come together, those things begin to happen, but they all have to be encouraged. We have to have the accountability. We have to make sure that things are working, but the community has to be engaged as well. And we get that warm fuzzy in elementary school. And if we get that warm and fuzzy in elementary school, then it will linger on into middle school. I was having a conversation the other day with parents saying that in middle school you have to be a little more intentional about your relationships. You really have to spend the time and to engage those relationships because you don't have the playground right there. But I think that it's important that we are able to engage people and welcome people at the elementary level and get them very involved in school so that they will be more apt to stay involved all the way through.
That pathway discussion is really important.
Yeah.
That's an awesome point, and you are the perfect man to bring that up too. Community PTO. So,
Sorry, you got one.
last comment, and then we're gonna.
We got a big announcement
announcements.
tomorrow. So I know it's 7 o'clock. I bet that decision has been made. Dr. Roche, you want to give us a little preview of what the preference is going to be? No? I'm sure there aren't people slaving away right now. It's been
You're
made,
ready
right?
to.
Not fair to the school board, not fair to the faculty, it's not fair to the parents.
And speaking of, I did want to recognize that Lisa
promise I'll keep
Kim
it a
was with us tonight, our school board member. Wanted to be sure to recognize you. I don't think Jill Spearing could make it tonight. She was here last time, and I forgot to recognize her. Dr. Register, thanks for being here. December 17th is our next meeting. We got one more before the end of the year, 5:30, again at the same place. We are going to move the feeder and pathways and transportation to the top, so we'll talk top level about that. And then with all the information we're getting, we can talk a little more about turnaround stuff on a granular level. Thank you, guys. We're adjourned.